niesamowite wrażenia przed nami. W takim razie następny nasz gość to również specjalna sytuacja, jakiej tutaj mamy mnóstwo, dlatego że Scena Jutra to jest wydarzenie o skali międzynarodowej, dlatego zachęcam Państwa, którzy potrzebują tłumaczenia, żebyście teraz użyli słuchawek. Język angielski będzie przed nami, dlatego że I have an honor and pleasure of introducing our first international star. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Metallica's show director, author of spectacular, world-famous technical solutions for concerts, Mr. Dan Braun. Stage is yours.
Thanks very much. Thank you. And thanks for that lovely introduction. Can we turn a little bit of light up out here? We're having a conversation, not a didactic presentation. Do you have any house lights you can bring up just a little bit so I can see who I'm talking to? Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Prosimy o trochę światła na
Very
widowni.
much a pleasure. As I get older, I seem to be getting asked to do this more and more. And I'm not sure if that's because I finally achieved a little bit of success at what I've been doing after 40 years, or if it's because I've just gotten old. I tend to think it's just because I've gotten old. What I have learned is that I much prefer to point spotlights at people than stand in them. So you'll have to put up with my discomfort. I've got, through a series of unfortunate incidents, busted up some knees and a foot. So it's a little bit difficult for me to stand here. This is a great thing. You have a wonderful conference going on. I wish when I was young I'd had an opportunity to explore an innovation conference and look at all of the wonderful things that can help in design and things. As I said, I'm a little bit old and never had that opportunity, so you guys are very lucky. I'm not sure you invited the right guy to speak about technical innovation, because for me, technical innovation is an end to a means. I never do anything trying to start with innovation or technology. I tend to use it as a solution to a problem. And so I don't know if I'm the right guy to talk about that. That's not to say I don't embrace technology and innovation, because I'm usually thought of as an early adopter. I usually am looking at the people who are bringing me their new toys and saying, "Can it do this?" And they say, "Not yet, but it will someday." So with that said, I don't think that you want to hear me talk about what I think the future of innovation is, because what I think generally gets me in a lot of trouble. Sometimes it costs my clients a lot of money, but we seem to work through all of that. What I can tell you about is what I've done, because that has some credibility. And so what I thought I would do is talk to you guys a little bit about what my process is in putting together a show, because I know something about that by other people's judgment. Some of that's achieved a little bit of success. So with that, we could talk about this. This is a quote, which I think is the clearest, elegant way that I've found to describe what I do. It comes from a friend of mine, Alex Reardon, who is also a designer of wonderful shows. His work is beautiful. And he told me that this quote came from his father. When I asked his father for permission to use the quote for my presentations, his father had no recollection of saying it. So I'm going to attribute it to my friend, Alex Reardon. And I believe this sums up pretty much what a guy who does production or show design, show directing does. So with that in mind, I guess I'll start by telling you that for me, the process starts from finding some inspiration somewhere. I have a keen, passionate interest as an amateur photographer, and I've trained my eyes to see things. I'm always looking for things. I'm looking for why an architect put a line here, why is the door there, why is that round, why is that this. I look at nature and I wonder how that little composition of a couple of leaves came together to create that beautiful thing. And I'm very fortunate to be able to capture most of that with photography. I don't carry a sketchbook anymore. because I don't sketch very well, and I can take a photo and it takes me back to where I was. So on my little journey of telling you what I do, if we can go to the next slide, I kind of want to talk a little bit about how inspiration like this, which is a beautiful architectural piece that sits in a convention center of all places in Amsterdam. And it's a beautiful light sculpture. You've got 16 vertical rods by 16 vertical rods, and they all have LEDs with them, on them. And the LEDs are all controlled, computer controlled, and they can create all sorts of shapes and do all sorts of things and move different things through that. And I stood and watched it for one day. I was in Amsterdam, and the event I was doing there had a little time. I stood and watched it, and at the time, they were moving little cubes through the space. They were creating little cubes, maybe 4 LEDs by 4 LEDs by 4 LEDs, and they were drifting them through that space back and forth, up and down, in different little configurations, moving along, and it was mesmerizing to me. And so I had previously been at a demonstration where some people were showing me some LED lighting products, and one of the products they showed me was this beautiful, about a 1 foot square cube of LEDs that could be programmed. I thought, boy, that would be useful. What would I use it for? How would I use it? That's really attractive. And somehow the combination of those two little things brought about this. And I hope that you can see this clear enough. This is Metallica's worldwide tour show, where we created a bunch of those little cubes which came from those inspirations. And another wonderful little thing was taking this chandelier, which hangs in my bedroom in Colorado. It's sort of an interesting little LED piece that I picked out with an architect. And because I sit in that bedroom quite a bit, or look up at that ceiling quite a bit as I'm laying in bed, as we needed to find something for Metallica's recent show reunion with the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra, this got created. And I don't tell a lot of people, but I guess a lot of people are going to know now that the inspiration for this came from the chandelier that hangs in my bedroom. In the middle of this picture, I don't know if you can see it clearly, but somewhere in the middle of that is a turntable stage with the band and 82 members of the San Francisco Symphony around them on a turntable that rotated exactly once during the show. And it all came from that little chandelier that hangs in my bedroom in Colorado. To tell you just a little bit about myself, as I said, I'm old. This all started for me a long time ago. In 1975, I was sitting and watching a Pink Floyd concert in my hometown of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And there was a big rainstorm coming. And I remember sitting and looking, and there were some guys putting polycover over the PA speakers, and I went, boy, that looks like a cool job. I wonder how you do that. And I happened by chance to meet the photographer who took that photo, and that is actually the person I was looking at doing that at that exact time. I went from there, after I finished school, I went and ran a very small nightclub where everybody played, the Police, Flock of Seagulls, everybody from that time period played this club. And I did everything with the music in that club, from loading trucks to lighting, sound, catering, everything else. And somewhere along the path, I ended up standing on stage in Yankee Stadium, and it's been a long and interesting journey for a kid from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And here's just another little picture that I put in of Metallica's last tour, which actually we'll get to where that inspiration came from a little later on. But another interesting little thing. So I said a designer needs to create some sort of art to someone else's specifications, and that begs the question of whose specifications. And for me, that specification becomes the performers or performer and all of the other stakeholders involved in the event. So obviously, if it's a musical attraction, that's the band, at least at the top of the food chain. If it's a corporate show, it might be the CEO, it might be the CMO, it might be whoever's involved in their messaging. And then it's all the rest of the stakeholders. It's the people who have to move the show in and out. It's the people who take care of the electrical. It's the people who take care of the accounting. It's the people who take care of life, fire, and safety. And when I'm thinking about putting a show together, I'm trying to be on the front side of those things. I far prefer to have a fire marshal walk into a show that I've designed and look at it and go, wow, I can't believe you thought this stuff through and you've left these exit ways, than have him want me to redesign the show to accommodate what rules they have in that city. So you try to think about all of those stakeholders. And for me, that process starts with listening. If it's a band, it starts with listening to their music and being very intense with what they're doing with whatever their new project is that they're putting out. But it's also about what they want to project. What are they about? What are they trying to do? What message are they trying to send or not? If it's a corporate client, it's about what do they want to say? What's their product? What are they doing? What's their thing? But it's also about what are the values of their company? What are the core values that are intrinsic to that company that they want all of the people in the audience to walk away feeling? And how am I going to incorporate that? As I think about those things, I have some tools that I think if you go to a show that I've done, I think there's some common vocabulary that you're going to find. And a lot of it comes from my sordid past. You saw that young kid sitting there and looking at a Pink Floyd concert. And one of my very favorite tools is synesthesia, which is trying to excite your senses in a way that's different. So providing some visual things that work with the music, maybe stimulate the music, make you see some different things. I like to think a lot about, I look at architecture a lot. I'm a big fan of an American architect called Frank Lloyd Wright. And one of his kind of things is entranceway things. If you enter one of his buildings, you'll enter through a very small portal and then step into a very large, great room. And that room, the unveil for that room is your entrance through that portal. And when I think about what I do in arenas with rock bands, it's the same sort of thing. You come through the entrance to the venue, you go through the vomitory and step into the seating area. And I'm not a big fan of kabuki drapes trying to hide things. You can't hide anything. The grand reveal for me is as you walk through that entrance and you look around and you begin to experience the show, oftentimes maybe an hour, 2 or 3 or more hours before the band ever comes on the stage. And that's a very big deal for me. And then the lighting, the visuals, certainly these days, video content and all of those things are all used to try to enhance and create images that take you somewhere else. If you wanted to sit at home and listen to the band's CD, you'd do that and probably have a better audio experience. When I think of a live show, and I was a kid that went to live shows. I went to sporting events, I went to theater, I went to rock concerts, I went to classical concerts, I went to dance, and I still get a kick out of watching the house lights go down at any event I'm at. It's that energy that separates recorded, produced, overproduced things from the experience of sitting in an audience and having a shared social experience with people and experiencing the emotion of a performer, whether that's a comedian. It doesn't matter to me. It's for some reason, it's what I enjoy, and it's something that I have been fortunate enough to have a career where I can practice getting to do that. Another very, very common theme that you'll see in what I do is audience participation. One of my big goals whenever I'm working with anyone is try to eliminate the barrier between the audience and the artist. So if you were to go to, if you had seen the Metallica show that's pictured there, you have a very difficult time looking from above, seeing the safety barrier line around the stage. And spent a lot of time and great care trying to make sure that I could get the audience so close that they could almost just about maybe touch the band, but not quite. And do that in a safe way and try to create that thing. Because for me, what the live experience is about is the energy that's created by whoever is performing on stage or presenting on stage, and the reaction of the audience taking that energy, hopefully amplifying that energy and sending it back towards the performers, having the performers feel it, re-amplify it, and send it back into the crowd. To me, that's the magic. That's what it's about. So one of the things that you'll see common in my designs is audience participation, starting with trying to get the crowd as close as I possibly can to the band, and then trying to find a way to take that last seat in the house and make it closer to the stage. I was a kid who sat in the front row. I was a kid who sat in the last row of every arena I ever went to, and I always enjoyed the front row more. But the front row is kind of hard to get. And when you think about it, 80% of the people who go to a show are sitting a long way from the stage. And what can we do? How do we affect people to make them actively involved in the show? To me, that's my job. What can I do to deliver the band's message and energy to the back of the house? When Metallica plays European festivals, there's often times where people are 300 meters from the stage. Trying to get those people involved in the show was a very interesting opportunity for a solution. And I think we achieved that. And in doing so, we leaned heavily on technology. It was a massive shift for the band for me to come to them and say, we're going to start using large video screens, not because we want to put your pretty face up there. Their faces aren't pretty, don't tell them I said that. But not so we can put your pretty faces up there for you to look at, but so that we can get those people 300 meters back to be able to see what's going on stage, experience the energy on stage, and hopefully get involved in the show. I had an opportunity at Networth to walk to the back of the house while they were on stage and watched people drinking beers and playing hacky sack, and kind of made the decision on that day that was unacceptable. We were going to change that. And through the use of video technology and some rather, our video director cuts the show in a rather unique way. It's probably not made for primetime television broadcast, but it is made for the live audience to experience and feel what's going on stage. And I can assure you that if you walk to the back of that crowd now, no one's playing hacky sack. And that's a huge deal for me. That's a big win, because that means we've got those people tonight, they're having a great time, and hopefully they'll come back and experience that again. Another common theme, another common piece of vocabulary you see with me is minimalist stuff. As I said, I enjoy architecture, I enjoy design schools, I'm sort of a fan of the Bauhaus school of design, and I like minimalist stuff. I like bold shapes and less description. If you'll notice, my slide deck has a lot of big pictures and not a whole lot of words. I think it's more powerful. I like bold shapes, and so this is something I did for the band Disturbed. I guess I'll save the story for a minute, but this was an interesting show to build. It didn't end up the way it started. They took a pretty hard left turn on me in the middle of it, and we had to make some pretty serious changes. I said we'd get back to that stadium show inspiration, and just so you know, I don't take it all too seriously, the Greeks had this all figured out a long, long time ago. I was doing a paper for a university, and it became a study on the theater of Dionysus back in Acropolis in about, I think if I remember right, about 5000 BC. And I was studying the dimensions and found that the dimensions for that theater were almost identical for that Metallica show that you saw the pictures of, to within about 1.5 meters. And it allowed me to realize I'm really not that good at what I do. It's all been done before. So you guys invited me here not to hear about Dan probably too much. You probably want to hear the stories about the shows. So I thought we'd take a little bit of time before we get to questions and stuff and talk about some of the things I've had fun designing with some really talented people, way more talented than I am. I think I'd like to start with this show, a little thing we did for an award show with a lady named Shania Twain. Hopefully you've heard of her. This is back a while ago. We were doing a series of TV award shows. And Shania was not real happy with the reception she was getting from the people in the high-priced seats on the floor, because those are all people who are there for the TV awards and this and that. And we were trying to figure out what to do. And her album was called Up at the time. So we created a little teeter-totter set of staircase that we rolled in during a commercial, teeter-tottered up, walked her off the stage, took her up into the balcony with her real fans. And interesting little bit of technology in a very strange way that we used there. The staircase was built out of chrome moly tubing, not something you normally see on a rock show, but we needed the lightest possible weight we could get with the most strength. And we used a little bit of engineering. The handrails are the web of the beam. The stairs are the flange of the beam. And it's an open top U-shaped box beam. And it worked incredibly well and walked her right up into the balcony. And it was a very amazing moment in that little award show. Back to my tour story with Disturbed. This was an interesting show. I said I like to listen when I'm starting to think about the design process. And I did a whole lot of listening from these guys and came up with this very clever design after watching them play a couple of small shows and deciding what they needed more than anything was a great place to showcase their talent. Came up with a simple design that was actually inspired from the Millennium Falcon in Star Wars. And we got just about almost ready to start cutting stuff and putting it together, and they decided they couldn't afford it. So another opportunity for solution. Part of what I think is part of the design process is figuring out how to solve those problems. And in what I think was a clever solution, we figured out how to innovatively turn the house stage that's normally provided for almost any show 45 degrees so that the point of the stage stuck out into the audience. Instead of having a flat downstage edge, we had a point sticking out. We've put some risers around it and sort of faked our little shape and ended up they had a very successful year and a half tour with it. I'm most closely associated with these guys. I've been working with them for a long time. I did an interview at the start of this tour cycle where I said I get to play in the best sandbox in the world, and I meant every word of it. They're an incredibly innovative and creative bunch of guys. They're often mistaken for a heavy metal band, and they are just a remarkable rock and roll band with hearts of gold and a great passion for doing things that no one's done. And really stepping off the top rung of the ladder and reaching for the next thing. I showed these guys some renderings of this show, and their only response was, "Can you make that happen?" "Yep, it's going to be expensive. Go for it." And we were able to do that. They did a whole lot of shows with it. It's the first time that I used kinetic motion in a show. I've been in kind of anti-kinetic motion for most of my career. I've watched people move video screens and stuff around, and I'm sort of like, yeah, so what? You got a great bunch of engineering and you can move a whole big heavy thing around, and what's it doing? But with computers and winches and the control systems these days, you can now get that stuff so it works really well, and you can actually create the movement so that it works with the music. And where I come from, movement in time to music is called dance. And it might sound a little funny for a bunch of video cubes at a Metallica show, but we definitely made them dance. And very, very successful show. Really thrilled with it, had a great run. So successful that we have a bunch of people who want to use it, that we're exploring whether or not we want to let anybody use the concept, but it worked really, really well for us. And I said I work with some corporate people. This is my favorite corporate client, an American company called Salesforce, technology leader. They're also very big in Europe. I had the pleasure of meeting the CEO of the company at an event. I actually just wanted to shake his hand. We ended up talking about audience participation and a whole bunch of the things I've been talking to you guys about, and he said, "You need to come work for me." Through an odd series of events that happened, and through listening there and hearing things like, I want to have a conversation with my audience. I don't want to have a didactic speaking at them. I want to have a different experience. I want my events to look different from any other corporations. I want people to walk into my events and do some different things. And so, because I have that passion about bringing that last row of seats closer to the stage, I end up working in the round a lot. And a lot of my clients end up being in some version of working in the round, because it's the only way that I can bring the people in the last row and bring them closer. And so we came up with this little presentation that's had about I think we're headed into the 9th year of shelf life on this. And people are now used to our shows being in the round. We normally don't use a stage. Our presenters walk out amongst the crowd. And it's a rather interesting corporate presentation, I guess. Talking about technology, I think it's a time to transition. This is a quote from a famous American rock and roll reviewer, movie reviewer, and author and things like that. And it talks about some of the bad sides of the music business. And as we talk about technology, it makes me think about what are our ethical responsibilities. I don't know that I'll be around doing this long enough, but certainly in the near future, we're going to be able to take video pieces and make it appear that people are saying things that they're not saying. And I'm not talking about GIFs that are on the internet right now, but I'm talking about things that are unable to detect whether it's true or not. And I think about what responsibility do we have as an industry as we start heading into those times. And it's something that weighs heavily on me, because I'm not sure that we've always been guided by the purest ethics and thought processes. And I think that as we walk around and look at all of this wonderful technology and what's available, I don't know if you guys saw any press on the tours that went across America last year with Roy Orbison in a holographic form, and they're going to do one with Whitney Houston and all of this stuff. These things that are coming on, there was I believe a circus in Germany that had all of the animals as holographs. And as this technology becomes better and better and more and more and more real, how are we going to make the right decisions? What guidelines are we going to put amongst ourselves? And I'm not talking about regulations from some outside agencies. I really believe as an industry we've always done best regulating ourselves. But what kind of things are we going to think about as we start using those technologies and we start manipulating images and sound? And where are we going to go with that? Food for thought. I'll leave that for you to contemplate. With that, I think I'd like to say thank you. If you're interested, here's a little bibliography of source material, and we can ask questions or answer questions or whatever.
Yeah, I have a question, because it was a great pleasure to listen to you. What you said to us was very inspirational to us. But tell me, you said something about listening to an artist you are working with. Did you ever encounter an artist who was like, his expectations towards you were like odd? And how did you react? How do you adapt to a situation when the artist has this message that is weird, I guess?
I'm weird. I
May appear weird.
I have to have some sort of a relationship with the people I'm working with. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to be best friends necessarily, but I have to feel something. I have a lot of friends who are incredibly successful designing shows, who can design a show for anyone or anything. That is not me. I have to have some connection. I have to feel something. As I said, I was a kid who went to 1 million shows. There has to be something that touches me emotionally, and that includes with my corporate client. Any corporate client that I work with. And I have turned people down. I just can't find that sort of a thing where it's like, yeah, I get what you're talking about. I'm not the guy to call if you want me to make a show to dress up your bad event. That's not me. That's not what I do. If you want someone to set a nice table for you to serve a fantastic meal on, that's what I do. I am not the guy to build the pinball machine around something that's just not really good. That's not what I do. I have to have some connection and some feel. So to answer your short question with already that long answer, there have been times I've walked away. And I usually do that by saying, you know what, I don't think I'm your guy.
So technology versus feelings.
I have some friends, and I'm happy to introduce you, but I don't think it's me.
Thank you very much. Oczywiście, jeżeli Państwo będą mieli jeszcze jakieś pytania, zapraszamy o 15:30 na Q&A tutaj, gdzie będą wszyscy prelegenci i jeżeli coś już się sformułowało w Państwa głowach, zapraszamy serdecznie, żeby te pytania zadać. Tymczasem zapraszam Państwa na 40-minutową przerwę. Zapraszam również do uczestniczenia w panelach w sali kamiennej, wystaw w salach redutowych, a po przerwie kolejni goście i dalsze prezentacje.